Great conversation. And Ray McGovern, you met with Edward Snowden. Is he cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, as we're led to believe, or is he the stand-up 29-year-old guy who's basically sacrificed his life for the better good?
Well, he thought he sacrificed his life. The good news is, by happy circumstance or happenstance, he's in a place on this globe that couldn't be safer for him. He was given asylum by Vladimir Putin in accordance with international law, and he betrays the demeanor of a guy who is really convinced he did the right thing. He's square with his conscience. He's sort of in some wonderment that he's still alive,
yeah,
and he's protected. He's doing what he can to further his disclosure of these abuses, and he's following the effects of his work, of his disclosures, very assiduously. He's got his computer, of course, and when we met with him, it was just a very warm meeting. We were able to reassure him, if further reassurance were needed, that his major fear when he got to Hong Kong, namely that he would have sacrificed everything, literally everything, and risked his own life, and nothing would happen. Well, we asked him as soon as we got in there. We said, "Now, Ed, are you still concerned that nothing's happening?" And he had this broad smile. He said, "Well, no. I'm really, really encouraged. It looks like people are paying attention. They can't ignore this stuff the way these journalists are revealing it." And then, of course, Colleen Rowley, Justin Nadek, and Tom Drake were able to give him even more particulars on some of the legislation that's being presented now in Congress. And I might just mention as an aside, Dianne Feinstein has her own bill, but my goodness, what that does is concretize. It actually codifies these gross violations of the Fourth Amendment. I do have to go now, but I would ask all your listeners just to kind of take a look at the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and then remember what Dr. King said in circumstances approaching these. What he said was, there is such a thing as too late. And as I look at what's happening here with the abuses that are being sort of condoned and then covered up, not by you guys, but by the mainstream press, well, we're approaching that point. And what I'm hoping now is that we can get together and make the president do the right things, as he actually has asked us to do on more than one occasion. So let's get out there and make these changes, take advantage of these exposures, and put people like Dianne Feinstein and Mike Rogers in their place. I'll say one more thing, and that is...
Are you sure?
When we met with Ed Snowden, we had this wonderful ceremony, this award ceremony, and then we kicked back, and I said, "Ed, are you aware that just 4 days ago, actually it was 6 days ago, it was on October the 3rd, I said, did you know that the former director of the CIA and of NSA, Michael Hayden, broadly suggested he'd really like to see you on the kill list?"
Jesus.
And he winced, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "that was at a public meeting, too, wasn't it?" Yeah. Then I said, "Are you aware that Mike Rogers, the head of the House Intelligence Committee, was also there and chimed in immediately saying, yeah, and I can help you on that." He winced again and said, "Yeah, I'm aware of that." Now, bear in mind, this was not a meeting of the mafia. This was a meeting on cybersecurity run by the Washington Post, which, incidentally, didn't report this vignette. But there you have it. So who are the rascals here? Who are the people who are dissing our Constitution? Well, it's not Ed Snowden. It's the Mike Rogers. It's the Dianne Feinsteins of this world. We've seen this happen before in the 30s in Germany. We need to face them down and make sure that they either adhere to their oath to defend the Constitution, or they get impeached, or they get voted out. Thanks for having me on. I do have to leave now.
I understand. Our CIA analyst has to leave now, and we're going to let you do that and have you back on again because you are such a sea of bright lumens in an unfortunate ocean of low lumens. And thank you for being brave because you're not going to win a popularity contest in Langley, Virginia, probably doing what you do, which is standing up for the American public that's actually bankrolling the whole thing.
Eric Schmidt, the Google executive chairman, telling the Wall Street Journal this: the NSA allegedly collected the phone records of 320 million people in order to identify roughly 300 people who might be a risk. It's just bad public policy and perhaps illegal. You agree with him?
No. And I'll tell you this much. You take down that phone records program and you will increase the risk of an attack in this country. I very much believe that.
It is 27 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome to the Smart Show. We are coming to you live from Marilyn Monroe's former apartment in West Hollywood, California. And we're talking about the NSA and talking to various people who've been good enough to be there not only in and around, through and about, on top and below the NSA, but also have recently gone to Russia and met personally with Edward Snowden. This is the great NSA whistleblower. This is a man who recently received an award, a major award handed to him by not only Ray McGovern with the CIA, whom we just heard from moments ago, but also from a former FBI special agent whose name is Colleen Crowley, and she's here, Rowley, beg your pardon, I've got a little CNN hangover there. Colleen Rowley, she's here with us right now on the Smart Show, and Colleen, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
So glad you're here, and I want to point out something that I said to you on the phone earlier. I pointed out how brave you were, and I thanked you on behalf of the people of Earth who actually do feel that they have a right to individuality and not to be molested endlessly by the scrutinizing tendrils of NSA or anybody else. And it seems uncommon to us, given the sort of general nature of the word FBI, the word CIA. We all sort of cringe with unpleasant notions, but you're a fine example of what a good American doing the right thing does, and after a time, I think you got sick and tired of being sick and tired of watching misbehavior going on. Is that about right?
Well, you know, I don't think you have too much option. I mean, if you sit and do nothing and then you watch the worst happen, and of course that's actually the case of 9/11. Our agents were very aware that this was a terrorist, and yet they could not get anywhere, and then you had to witness the worst happen. The same happened with the people that were doing the checks of the airport's security, and they were tearing their hair out because they knew how insecure the airports were before 9/11. I've co-authored an article entitled WikiLeaks and 9/11, What If? And the point was, if we had had a way to get information out to the public, would many of us have chosen then to do that rather than witness, what we all feared would happen? And obviously, I don't think people have a choice. You can't live with yourself afterwards if you go along with this wrongdoing or laxity or whatever. And, of course, now we're watching things go in a completely wrong direction again with the war on journalists and the war on whistleblowers.
And it's interesting, you say war on journalists. Many of us are not only being watched, just as Mildred in Ohio is being watched, but we're being watched with a little extra special love, I think. And it is a dangerous time, to be sure. It used to be that you just had to worry about your assignment editor spiking the story. I put one together in Chicago when I was on WMAQ, which was a CBS all-news station. This was about 10 years ago. And I had uncovered a system by which a certain hospital was getting more hearts and livers than the other hospitals, which the insurance companies, the federal government kicked into. The doctors were getting cash rewards on the side. the hospital administrator, his brother-in-law owned the helicopter service that got people to the hospital. It goes on. And I was told, well, there's a live panda birth at the Brookfield Zoo. Let's do that instead. The other thing sounds, so complicated. So it used to be your own people spiked it because it was too complicated. Now we've got official organs that go way above doing the very thing that people have been suspicious was going to happen all along anyway. And you're a former FBI special agent. You're under even greater scrutiny, under an even more intense microphone, magnifying glass, like an ant under a magnifying glass in the sun. You, I think, at your own peril now, support the people that you're defending.
Well, I'm sure we got some attention of the officials when we flew to Moscow. And other than that, I think that the officials, care about people that get traction. And so if you're a journalist, so, Woodward and Bernstein, for instance, when they were writing the series of articles about Nixon, obviously they were commanding Nixon's full attention. I mean, if you listen to the Nixon tapes now, this was his number one attention at the time, and then also Ellsberg was similar. So when you are able to actually have an impact publicly, the other examples, Martin Luther King with J. Edgar Hoover. So if you have an impact publicly with other people, of course, the double-edged sword of that is that now you will have people in power that will be raising their eyebrows and in some cases be trying to squelch the truth of whatever it is. And there's good journalists. There's not a lot. I would say there's a lot of great journalists left, but there are some good journalists left in the United States. And the people like Jane Mayer, who wrote a series and exposés about the torture situation, and to this day, a lot of this is still classified secret. The $40 million investigation that the Senate Intelligence Committee did, 6,000 pages, it took 2 years, is still hidden away in some vault somewhere. So if someone knows what's in that report and calls up Jane Mayer, knowing that Jane Mayer has been the main writer about this, obviously the NSA now knows. And the NSA has every incentive then to do all kinds of things. And, so people who are really in the forefront of trying to get the truth out, and it's not just whistleblowers, it's now journalists and reporters, and in the case of The Guardian, I think it's the whole newspaper that's being threatened over in the UK now. They took hammers to their computers, for heaven's sakes, if that's not a threat.
Yeah.
So we all have to, this is key thing for people to recognize, because oftentimes people don't necessarily care about their own privacy. We all think our bedrooms and, we wouldn't be taking a shower out in the middle of the street. So it's common sense that we all should deserve and get some, minimum of privacy. But when push comes to shove, oftentimes people will always say, oh, if it keeps me safe, I guess I would shower out in the middle of the street. I'm not, it's kind of one of these things that people are desensitized now about their own civil rights and their own privacy rights. However, you got to look at it about this freedom of press and freedom of association, and those are even bigger. Those are the group rights, and if we lose freedom of press, we are basically losing any ability to know the truth of anything going on.
Well, it's so true. As we talk to Colleen Rowley right now, she's a retired FBI agent, former Minneapolis Division legal counsel who brought some of the pre-9/11 lapses to light. She also testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee about some of the endemic problems facing the FBI and the intelligence community. It was her memo, by the way, to FBI Director Robert Mueller, connection with the Joint Intelligence Committee's inquiry that led to a 2-year-long Department of Justice Inspector General investigation, and she was one of 3 whistleblowers chosen as Persons of the Year by Time magazine. And so you are somebody who has paid full and close attention, who does, I think, put yourself in some certain jeopardies. We were just talking to Ray McGovern just moments ago, and he pointed out that the CIA had put a joking kill order on Edward Snowden. But people are really pissed off, people who are actually involved in this. You have Senator Feinstein today on CNN itself saying that she thinks the NSA needs even more power, that they're a wonderful organization helping oh so many. I'm being sarcastic and snide and sardonic, of course, but I only can add texture and color to her statement as the NSA is building this 1.5 square mile facility to house nothing but raw American and international data. Everything from every piece of pornography you've ever watched online, every text message from a cell phone, everything. You're an FBI special agent, former FBI special agent. This is really true, isn't it?
Yes, if listeners can do anything, they have to recognize Dianne Feinstein's bill. Calling it a Trojan horse is too good. Her bill not only expands NSA monitoring, but it actually would make it prohibit legal challenges against the NSA, if you can imagine. She's actually trying to shut down future legal challenges in this bill of hers. She was briefed, and she's very complicit with this all through, obviously, the Bush administration and even into the Obama administration. She's been one, they call it the Gang of Eight, but she's always been one who was briefed. It's kind of odd that she feigned a surprise about the United States listening into Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, because Dianne Feinstein would have known that. She's one of the people who very much understands how NSA works. None of this surprised her, and she just doesn't think the American people needed to know. And of course, many of these officials are furious that the American people now have learned the extent of the monitoring on themselves, not only on foreigners, and now they are doing everything in their power, including threats, including this kind of very deceptive bill that Feinstein has put out to make people think that they care. I saw Dianne Feinstein's interview on Face the Nation this Sunday, and she was calling Edward Snowden all kinds of, the same things. No, he shouldn't get amnesty. He's betrayed the United States, etc. Well, I would say Dianne Feinstein has betrayed the United States. I'm just going to give you one little a key detail here as well. When I wrote my memo in May of 2002 about the FBI's pre-9/11 lapses that were being covered up, I delivered my memo after being debriefed by the staffers to Dianne Feinstein's office, because I had seen her name in the paper as being on the Intelligence Committee. And when I testified to the Senate Judiciary, she was one of the people there and asked a couple. Actually, I remember she asked me a question about profiling. She seemed fine. I didn't know her at all at the time. But all of these years now, she has completely gone to the dark side. And she thinks that massive monitoring of billions of people around the world, almost all of it non-relevant, including the Pope, including the head of the United Nations.
Right, of course the Pope. Of course. Yeah. Like, who would have thought of that? But of course the Pope. Anybody with a wide reach needs to be even more closely monitored. And let me ask you a question, Colleen Rowley. You are a former retired FBI agent, former Minneapolis Division legal counsel, brought some of the pre-9/11 lapses to light, testified, brought forth problems with the FBI. You personally met with Edward Snowden just a couple of weeks ago. You're fully involved, have a really wonderful and articulate and keen focus on all this thing. What is the payoff for Senator Dianne Feinstein, who introduces this bill that would punish you and me for even, it's like the former meat disparagement laws. If you insulted a potato or a piece of steak, you could be sued by the beef manufacturers, because really what you didn't want was mad cow disease, but they just won't let you insult the beef. She's trying to create the same prophylactic measure, the same shields on her enterprise of comfort. What's the payoff for her to do this to us and keep championing the cause of Big Brother?
You know, I think the people that now see themselves as this, club or the controllers of this have just simply been corrupted now. It's kind of like affected their ability to think clearly, in my opinion. And you can see this in many other organizations, otherwise good people. The priest pedophile scandal. I mean, these weren't bad people, but when they're in positions of power and over time, they start then hushing everything up. They see every bit of information coming out as damaging them personally. And I don't know I can't explain exactly what it all is with some of these people, because you would think that they would be able to tell the truth and own up to some mistakes. In fact, a former NSA director, Bobby Inman, actually gave that piece of advice. He said, if Snowden is putting this in for Snowden's disclosures, it's not Snowden personally, it's the journalists now, but if they're giving this information out, over time, why doesn't the NSA just go out now and level and tell everybody it's going to come out anyways? So that's what the former NSA director. And you see these people fighting tooth and nail to still obfuscate. They will deny that they do, even though the documents speak for themselves, they still are denying a lot of it. They go into these committee meetings. I happened to sit through the October 2nd Senate Judiciary meeting that featured Clapper and Alexander testifying, and they were not made to be sworn in. They were the fact witnesses, and they let them get by without even raising the right hand and swearing to tell the truth. Then the second part of that judiciary meetings were two law professors, and they had to raise their right hand as to swear to tell the truth about their legal opinions. It made no sense whatsoever.
Well, but it does make sense, doesn't it? That's the thing, and I think you point this out in much of your bravery and hard work. It makes sense because none of this is an oops or a boo-boo. And that's the part that the public really needs to wrap their head around. It's not clodhopperism en masse, though that certainly may be part of it, but these are conspicuous, planned events, well orchestrated and well executed, unlike the stuff you exposed, which was clodhopperism, a lot of it. But these people really are focused. Feinstein clearly knows what she's doing, and I wonder if she's got financial skin in the game, stock in many of these enterprises, or receives cash and prizes in ways you and I can't even imagine. Why would anybody...
I know her husband has connections to the defense industry. That's always been the case. I don't know if she's got direct connections to the surveillance. There's like 2,000 private contractors. Booz Allen is just one of thousands of these private contractors that are making hand over fist money. And I think there's a huge revolving door between people in government, mostly the executive branch, but actually also the legislative branch, especially in lobbying and staffers that go back and forth between these positions where they make a lot of money. Then they might take a stint in a think tank back and forth. You see that the think tanks are all along the same lines. They're putting out the fodder, these talking points, and then a Feinstein can go in and claim that if we had just had massive NSA monitoring, we would have been able to prevent 9/11, when it's precisely the opposite, that there was a lot of information. And in fact, the officials claimed they had too much information, and that is why they were unable to read it, to share it, to act on it, and especially to share it with the public.
By that peculiar logic, Colleen Rowley, former FBI special agent, by that peculiar logic, they're simultaneously building this 1.5 square mile data center, this massive, huge complex in Utah to store all the data. So since they say too much data means we can't sift through it and it becomes burdensome and impossible, therefore we're going to now build a superstructure to hold even more of the stuff so that we really can't do our job. Again, these are prevarications. These are false statements in some way. These defy the if P then Q basic Boolean logic string, and yet we're all supposed to believe it because we really don't have, sadly, as we talk about journalists, we don't have anybody at the news network level parsing this stuff out. They just say, and now a commercial. So this is hard.
And it's Einstein's definition of insanity. If you know, and of course some of this is because of controlling the message. And now we're going right back to why are they doing this massive effort to get as much info and control people's thoughts and their messaging and chill. Certainly this will have a chilling effect upon association and speech and everything else. Well, it's to control the message. And, you know, we're looking almost at, we're at the abyss of Orwell, and seeing this world that exists where, you know, the government seeks to control all of the communications. And it's diluted. I think, you know, the thing is, we saw this in almost science fiction / horror shows all along. There'd be a James Bond where some evil mastermind was trying to control things, and you kind of laugh about it saying, well, isn't that funny? It is funny. It cannot work. It absolutely cannot work. These are Minority Report type movies where they claim they can predict who is the criminal or the terrorist. This is all, you know, I suppose people would like this to exist because they're scared. So they would like these government claims that if we just gather all this information, we can protect you.
And pre-crime. Stop it before it happens.
Yeah. It's an appeal to base fear, these emotions that are used then to control people. I've identified 5 main emotions: fear, hate, greed, false pride, and blind loyalty. And when you press those on most people in sequence, you own them. You can kind of control them. Now, if you own the ways and the means of communication, and you're able to cow your independent media and your journalists into, as happened in the lead up to Iraq, where they put all the Pentagon retired generals on CNN telling us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. I think that is the model. That is exactly what they want. They want the ability to control the message. And that's really what's on the line right now.
Colleen, I'm going to jump in because people come and go, jump in their cars, get out. They're listening on a smartphone, on an iPad right now, on anything basically with a chip and signal, so we never know when they come and go. So I just want to reintroduce you. We're talking right now to Colleen Rowley, a retired FBI agent and former Minneapolis Division legal counsel. She's the one who brought some of the pre-9/11 lapses to light, testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee about some of the endemic problems facing the FBI and the intelligence community. It was her memo to FBI Director Robert Mueller in connection with the Joint Intelligence Committee's inquiry that led to a 2-year-long Department of Justice Inspector General investigation. She happened to be one of the 3 whistleblowers chosen as Persons of the Year by Time magazine. Further, back in April of 2003, following an unsuccessful and a highly criticized attempt to warn the director of the FBI and other administration officials about the basic dangers of launching this invasion against Iraq, she, Colleen Rowley, stepped down from her GS-14, I guess that was your status legal position, to go back to being a regular FBI special agent, then retired from the FBI in around 2004, and now you're speaking publicly. You just recently visited with Edward Snowden himself and are bringing back some of this information, this evidence, and this sculpted worldview for us. We're really the victims of all of this, and you're somebody who's been on the inside. We have a tweet here from Mike in Arizona, tweeting to us at GoHarrison, tweeting and wants to know, is your life in danger because you're out talking about this very stuff, especially when Senator, I'm obviously spreading the tweet out, the 143 characters, but especially with Senator Feinstein looking to punish anybody who says anything. Do you feel your life is in danger?
Well, this is a part of this fear-mongering ploy that we get this question all the time. To be honest, I think it's something like 18 or 19,000 people in the United States die every year in car accidents. And we all know usually is somebody either close or maybe one or two links removed, people who have either been seriously hurt or killed in car accidents. And yet, when you open your car door, you don't think to yourself, oh, this could be it. I could be killed. Actually, my daughter was just in a rear ender a couple of days ago. Somebody just smashed right in. She didn't get seriously hurt or anything, but this is the dangers of living are really what do they say? There's a famous quote. I mean, the price we have to pay for living is death. You know, that's the whole nature of the beast. And some things are actually more dangerous. Going into a hospital or taking a medication, I think the figure is 200,000 people in the United States die of improper medications or a mistake made by a hospital. It may even be higher than that. So if you look at the true risk to yourself and then say, well, why nobody thinks about those kinds of things. But yet we constantly have this in the forefront of our mind. I think only 7 Americans have died, something like that, since 9/11. It's just a handful, 30. That's it. It's 30 Americans have died due to terrorism. And yet that's what is motivating most of this trillions of dollars that have been spent on wars, on monitoring.
Colleen Rowley, former FBI special agent, due to terrorism from brown people. We're not talking about how many black people in Texas are still being harassed, abused, how many people die from just crazy, wretched lunatics, no matter what the color of skin or religious affiliation. It's a much greater number, but these resources are not necessarily focused on them. They're focused on the thing that you and I can't really see ourselves, but have to trust people like Dianne Feinstein to declare and reinforce over and over again they're out there and they're coming after you, and you need to let her be the sole decider, using a George Bushism. I get to do that every year and feel really good about it. She gets to be the one that holds the baton or the bullwhip, and frankly, it frightens me. I don't think she's the right kind of person to do this, and she's got way too much passion to do the wrong thing, and that to me is a red flag.
Well, if there's somebody out there who wants to throw their hat in the ring and run against Dianne Feinstein, they ought to do it. And even if they don't have, cannot self-fund, are not a millionaire and cannot self-fund, I think it would be worth it just because people need to write about her positions. It's just not getting enough exposure. And, you know, people vote on her for very silly reasons. You know, she's the incumbent, whatever. So if going back to this fear-based propaganda, though, exactly what you were saying is this is deliberate, and if people understand that they are the target of propaganda to manipulate them, you would think that people would get angry about that and say, I'm tired of being constantly my buttons being pressed and this fear-based. When you mentioned right-wing terrorism, domestic terrorism, and that doesn't include the kind of people who just lose it, like the black shooter, and so many of these are the woman in D.C. who apparently was mentally ill, and etc. That is a much higher threat. Right-wing was at least twice as many as Islamic extremism, and yet almost no resources are going into that as compared to what we're doing internationally on this very low risk. And if anything, we're making it worse. If people think that, last night on 60 Minutes, there was a show on Guantanamo, and the 60 Minutes host kept saying 3,000 people were killed. You know, and they were talking about prosecuting the suspects, and she kept saying 3,000. Well, the United States now has killed hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Of course, everyone knows Iraq and Afghanistan, but also in Pakistan and Yemen. And if anything, if it was a zero-sum game, we would have killed several 100,000. You'd think we'd be making progress. Well, no, because all you're doing is increasing the hatred around the world.
Right. They have family, they have friends, and when you
dumb.
kill the town priest, all those parishioners are going to be really upset. When you kill the schoolmaster that has educated 4 different generations of children, then those parents and those family members are going to be upset. You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, we've run out of time, Colleen Rowley. I really want to thank you so much for joining us here on The Smart Show. Would love to have you back when you're available. You are just such a bright light in such dark times. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for supporting Edward Snowden and other whistleblowers.
Well, when in doubt, support it out. That's what I say. And if it rhymes, it must be true.